'tis the season. And also Spitfire Gold, so it's relevant. Although I guess it would have been a wee bit more appropriate if it was Spitfire Blue. That being said, how that would relate to beer, I'm not quite sure. Do you get blueberry beer? Would you want blueberry beer? I suppose if it's beer, would it matter? But blue coloured, but no, anyway. I just noticed actually, just before I started the camera rolling there, that this is made or brewed by Britain's oldest brewery, which is Shepherd Neame in Faversham in Kent. So it's presumably why they call it Spitfire, because as we all know, a lot of the squadrons were stationed in Kent during the old Battle of Britain. And yes, I know that it was the Spitfire's slightly uglier cousin, the Hurricane, who bore the brunt of the battle, but we say Battle of Britain, we think Spitfire. It's just the way things are. Poor old Hurricane. Now, if you are a modeller of a certain age, gender and nationality, although those aren't requisites, but if you do fit that bill, there is a certain modelling subject that is very, very dear to our hearts, quite possibly at a genetic level. And that is probably because most of us cut our teeth on a polybagged Spitfire from Woolworths of a Saturday morning in our childhood, bought with our 20p pocket money. Incidentally, it was actually Woolworths who got Airfix to put their kits in these little poly bags, because they felt that the boxes took up too much room, and putting the bags sort of vertically on those little pokey out rack things was more, they could get more stuff in their stores. So it's Woolworths. As it turns out, it wasn't a polybagged Spitfire that I cut my teeth on. It was that Hawker jump jet, the predecessor to the Harrier, the Hawker Siddeley P. Oh, I could never remember its number. No, it's gone. The silver one. It was actually that I built with my dad. That was the first ever model I built. Anyway, every now and again, as I say, modellers of that, over a certain age and of a particular gender and nationality, just feel the urge to build a Spitfire. And it usually, for me, it usually comes from after I've been to a show and there's maybe a Spitfire SIG, special interest group table, or just every table probably has a Spitfire on it somewhere. And as I say, you just have to build one. And I have two in the collection at the moment. I've got the little 1/44th scale Edward one, the one I scratch built with Merlin on it, and the big Tamiya 1/32nd scale, which, funnily enough, it was 5 years ago this very festive season that I got that kit. So that's been 5 years I've been doing this. God, you'd think I'd be getting better at it, huh? And ironically, this very festive season I've started yet another Tamiya 1/32nd scale kit, the big Mozzie, the Mosquito Mark 6. And actually, it was last Christmas that I started the Corsair. It must be a thing for building big Tamiya kits at Christmas. But anyway, that's the 1/44th and a 1/32nd Spitfire. And whilst it's not my... I don't have a scale yet, as it were, but the vast majority of... Well, I've built more 1/48th than I've built of any other scale, and my stash is made up primarily of 1/48th scale aircraft. And I don't have a 1/48th scale... Well, I didn't have a 1/48th scale Spitfire, because, well, obviously now I do. So earlier this year, I think it was about September or something, I just, the urge, as I said, it's like when you go to the show, it's just like it's... not relit, the fire is always there, the fire is always burning, it just needs the heat turning up. And I decided to build a Spitfire. And as I say, because I've already got two Mark 9s, I decided to go with the Photo Reconnaissance Spitfire, Airfix, the 1/48th scale PR Spitfire. And I duly ordered one, and I must have mentioned this on my Facebook page, when a young chap by the name of Andy Firth decided that it might be quite a good idea if myself, himself and young Will Patterson out there in the United States of America have a little micro group build between ourselves, where the criteria would be a 1/48th scale Airfix Spitfire of any variant, although obviously I had the PR version anyway, which we duly started, and they both duly came in over the finishing line months ago. Two very, very excellent examples, I have to say. And although I did finish this a week or two ago, in fact a little bit longer than that I think, and as you'll see from the, if you're watching this video at some other time other than the day that was made, which is today obviously, you'll see that it was uploaded hopefully on the 31st of December. The deadline I should say, for the finishing date for this route build was December 2015. So nothing like nick of time stuff. Huh. So anyway, here it is, it's done. I decided to paint it using Airfix's own enamel paint, because they do the PR blue. I know Hitaka do one, but I haven't quite gotten the hang of Hitaka paints yet. People either swear by them or swear at them, and as of yet I've only sworn at them. So I decided to go with the enamel paint, because I no longer use pin washes as such. I rarely do any. Most of my, no, all of my weathering is now done post painting. I don't do any panel line pre-shading, panel pre-shading, or anything of that ilk anymore. I start with a factory fresh aircraft and then weather down from there, which typically means scouring the surface, you know, because I use the pigments. So I'm literally weathering my actual paint finish. Now the thing is with the PR Spitfires is that they are a glossy, or they are a shiny surface finish anyway. And I didn't paint the markings on this, I used decals. In fact I used an extra decal sheet for this. I was going to go do a Turkish version, which is red squares, because you don't often see that. But I don't know, it's a Spitfire. Spitfires and RAF roundels go together like cheese and onion, or ham and pineapple, or you know. So I ended up going for an RAF variant, which has the red, white and blue upper roundels as opposed to just the red and blue, which is actually a little bit different as well. I quite like that. I know the one in the Airfix kit comes that way, but I just think it looks quite nice, that one. Has a little crest on the horizontal stabilizer, sorry, the vertical stabilizer. And because I was using a decal, I then had to put a gloss finish over the top. And so I used Humbrol's own little tinlet of gloss varnish, which is actually quite, for me, it's quite tricky to do, just to get that balance right between viscosity and pressure and distance and whatnot. And you'd find you'd be getting areas that are lovely and shiny and other areas that have kind of got that slightly orange peely effect. So you'd go back and you'd sand that back a wee bit and do another bit, do another coat, and you get that bit okay, but then another bit wouldn't be. And then before you know it, you've got like 100 coats of varnish on this thing. It's doubled in size. The upshot is that I've lost the crispness of some of the surface detail. By that I mean, if you could imagine a panel line magnified, so there's a panel line in the plastic. So many coats of gloss has rendered that panel line, it's softened the edges. And because I scour the paint, and what I use is a paintbrush, get an old paintbrush, and you chop off the bristles, leaving about 1 millimetre or so. So you've got this little tuft of bristles that you can scour the paint. So you're actually deforming the paint surface, and that way, because you're doing it by hand, there's variations in the pressure that you're using, the circles, the size of the circles, and if you use a variety of different pigments, you'll get tonal variations, but you've physically altered the surface of the paint. But because this was gloss, that was a little bit trickier to do. So it's very easy to do on satin and matte finishes, but on gloss it's a bit trickier. But I eventually did get it to work that way, but because also I wanted the decals to be similarly tainted, as it were. But you have to be careful you don't rub too hard and go through the varnish and rip the decal off, which is why it's a lot easier if you're painting the markings using masks. But I didn't choose to do that on this one. So, and the thing is that they weren't frontline aircraft, so that they were well looked after, so that basically what you're trying to show there is just the elements having their effect on them, as opposed to a war-weary aircraft. Because this thing, the one I've actually modelled was, I think, from the 1955, so it would have been well looked after. I then coated it with Johnson's Clear. Clear is is good for giving you that slightly toned down gloss finish. I was going to try and use the whole, you know, the fine sanding sticks and the Alclad polishing cloths, but it just wasn't working because of the, it just wasn't working. So I sprayed it with clear, and that's given it a nice scale gloss-ish finish, shiny where it needs. I mean, it does probably reflect light in the way that the real thing might. What else? Yeah, the undercarriage. This is a little gripe I have. Airfix are one, I think, are one of the few manufacturers, because most manufacturers only give you a wheels down option, but Airfix do give you the you know, retracted undercarriage. But the wheels down option, and I think this goes for most manufacturers, there will be some that will give you the choice, but they're lowered struts, but they're fully extended. You know how they have the dampeners, the oleo dampeners, with the little, you know, the little angled scissors, so that when the plane lands, the weight of the plane compresses the strut, which means the wheel sits slightly higher on the strut and in relation to the wheel cover. And Airfix don't do that. They have a fully extended. It's as if the plane's just lifted off the ground. The wheels are still down, but the struts are fully extended. So I decided to chop them, which was when you think about it, the point on the model that takes most of the weight is the bit that you're cutting, and thus reducing its structural integrity. So I reduced them, and in doing so I completely screwed up the little plastic scissors, which was fine because they were totally out of scale anyway, being plastic. So I scratch built them out of brass. So the wheels now sit slightly higher in relation to the rest of the strut. The plane now sits slightly lower, at a slightly less steep angle, as it were. That's a tiny little niggle, I know. And the only other things I did was I used an HGW late model RAF harness, so it's not the Sutton type harness, and added the little whip antenna. Oh, and I had to get a set of decals for the wingtop stencils. This particular Spitfire did have wingtop markings, whereas the Airfix one didn't, so it wasn't included on their sheet. Which was I managed to get a stencil set for about £3 from Hannons, so it was no great loss. Oh, and I did use an Edward mask, because I hate canopy masking, and even if I have to spend £10 to get a mask, I think it was only £3 or £4, even if I do have to spend that kind of money, I'll get it, because I just absolutely hate masking. Even though it's a very simple one, the PR Spitfire has a pressurized cockpit, so the front windscreen doesn't have the, obviously doesn't have the bulletproof section. It's just a continuous piece, and the main bubble part also is slightly different from the conventional Spitfire, so it's a very simple canopy, but still I used an Edward mask set. A Fort Reconnaissance Spitfire to the collection in 1/48 scale at last. It was quite easy to paint, really, because it's entirely blue, including the propeller boss undersides. I have seen pictures of them with the undercarriage and the wheel wells also painted blue, but and I couldn't get any information on this particular one as to whether or not they were interior green with silver struts or not, so I went for that anyway, just to kind of break things up a wee bit, but not an awful lot. So there we go, 1:30 on the 31st of December. You know what, better late than never. Well, I'm not late, I mean I'm on time, just kind of, you know, very, very close to the edge of the room. Don't drink and talk at the same time. Don't drink from a bottle and talk at the same time. Don't drink and drive either. So that's it for this year. Oh, no, well, yeah, kind of. Well, I was intending making another video shortly, a sprue tour, for something that landed under the tree this year. The 1/44th scale Bandai Force Awakens Millennium Falcon. Now, I know Fine Molds did a 1/44th Falcon, which was the round radar dish, and I never got a chance to build that. I may yet, I don't know. I mean, I suppose these will be quite hard to come by. And also Dragon have got a Star Wars license as well, and they're bringing out a 1/44th scale Falcon, as well as a 1/44th X-Wing and TIE Fighter, but they're also bringing out a 1/35th scale AT-AT, all-terrain armoured transport, the big walkers from the Empire Strikes Back, 1/35th scale. This thing is going to be huge. But anyway, I haven't seen them either. I don't know if they've released pictures or anything of them. But this is the Bandai one. Now I've had a look at the plastic in the bags, and it is a serious piece of stunning moulding. The detail work along the side of the Falcon, or along the circumference, the burger meat if you like, is just amazing. It's beautifully detailed as it is, but they also have, well, you know what, we'll save it for the video. I'll do a sprue tour of this later on. So anyway, so all that remains is to wish you guys a happy New Year, and I wish you all a very prosperous and styrene filled 2016 if I don't see you before, you know, the rest of the day. And it's Hogmanay here in Scotland, which is traditionally the day we sort of go to town on. Not that you can really sort of now separate that from any weekend of the year, I suppose, these days. But anyway, Happy New Year and all the very best, everyone.